So, what I wanted to do is start to introduce some of the materials you're dealing with, and also talk about what we do in an art history class, because while some of you I know from other classes, it's not a class like history and English that you're forced to take it in high school. That a lot of people come here and like, what do you do in art history? So I think it's worthwhile start talking about method, right? What do we do? And what it comes down to is what are we going to be discussing as we talk about works of art. And on one level, one of the things we're going to be discussing is subject matter. What has the artist chosen to depict, right? What can we identify in this? Now, in art history, the term for this, the $10 term, is iconography. Since icon means image, graphy means reading, right? You're reading the image. So the subject matter or the iconography. And in this case, the subject matter in both of these is exactly the same. And even closer to the same, the closer we look. So we have the Virgin Mary at a Catholic institution, right? The mother, the earthly mother of Jesus, who is sitting on her lap. Jesus' father is, in Christian theology, God the Father, right? Heavenly God the Father. That Mary did not know any male who fathered Christ, right? Her husband, Joseph, is a beard, right? For lack of a better word, right? He's there so that she wouldn't get in trouble in many ways with people. He's there to protect her, right? So here she is with Christ on her lap. And you'll notice in each of them that the artist has given us the same basic subject matter with very great similarities the more we look. So, for example, in each of them she cocks her head slightly toward Jesus, right? In each of them he gestures toward her with this blessing pose, sort of Boy Scout thing, which is exactly the same pose that a priest gives you when he blesses you in the church. Peace be unto you, Pax Vobis. Pax Vobis, right? That's the gesture that Christ is. But some differences. Christ is looking at us in the one on the left, looking at her in the one on the right. Right? Notice the placement of her proper right hand. How similar it is in the two of these. Right? We're still just talking about the subject matter here. Right? And you wonder, why are these two so very, very similar? When it comes to inconsequential detail like that, right? I mean, it's got to be something that works here. Right? Each on a throne. Each with this gold background. It's real gold. We'll talk more about that. And each of them with these two little circles, roundels, for a bigger word, where we see angels in half figure, right? Looking down on her as well. Great similarities in subject matter, not only in the overall layout, but in also many of the details, right? Some differences within that. We already mentioned Christ's different gaze, but also the difference in the thrones. One is rounder. You'll notice that the artist isn't really attempting to get the perspective right on the inside of that round throne, which is a tough thing anyway. Any draftsmen out there, right? Cylinders are tough, especially cylinders decorated on the inside and the outside like that, right? That's a tough thing. On the right, also the sense of it existing in space is not a major concern, right? You see the arms come forward, but they really kind of drop down. And the arms of your chair, you know how perspective works, right? The things get further from you, they get closer together like railroad tracks in the desert, right? But they kind of go the other way, right? They kind of go wrong and it makes it flatter, right? And they don't really line up with the stool down below. Now, the artist is really isn't trying it. It's not like it's a failure, right? It's just not a concern at this point, okay? So, as we're looking at the subject matter, we see a number of incredible similarities, the iconography here. Okay, so that's one of the things we talk about, is we try to talk about what we're looking at. And try to understand it. Sometimes it's fairly straightforward when we have some knowledge of religious imagery. Sometimes it's a lot more difficult. Sometimes that can be, a study that could take years to simply figure out what the heck is up there. And there are certain artists in certain periods where I had a whole seminar in grad school on try to identify what this guy painted. This is 19th century, late 18th century, early 19th century British painter, Fuseli. It's all about Fuseli's iconography, because we Another thing that we study, in addition to the subject matter, is the style. So if you think about it in this way, right, the subject matter is the what. What did the artist depict? The style is the how. How did the artist depict it? Now, in each of these, we assume that the artist is making some decisions. Decisions on subject matter, right? This versus that. But with style, there's also decisions that the artist is making, right? The things that make one artist's work look different from another artist's work. Why does Raphael look different from Michelangelo? Elements of style. So we've already kind of gotten into this a bit. One could argue that certain choices, like the way Christ is looking, might be relative to certain artistic concerns by the artist on the right versus the artist on the left. The choice of how to handle that throne might be slightly different. The colors that they choose might be slightly different. The proportions of the figures might be different. Right? These are all things that are a result of artistic choice, and they relate to style. And as we talk about style, we can also talk about other things that affect the way it looks, the how. One of these is the materials that the artist chooses to use. Do you know what the term we use for artists' materials? Medium, exactly right. The medium that the artist uses. Nice close-up, huh? I use my professional development, right? Very nice cameras. And I've been taking pictures of these for a long time. I'm getting even better ones now, right? The cracking that you're seeing, the sort of wave pattern, is something you like to see. It means that it is what it claims to be, which is a 700-year-old painting, right? 750-year-old painting. It's probably called craquelure. You won't be tested on that, right? But it's as the panel warps and changes through time, you get that kind of crack pattern across the top. But it's nice to see these things in close detail, and this is why I would recommend highly that you get to the National Gallery as often as you can to see it. So the medium, right, is the artistic materials that are used, and this is part of the style. This is part of the choices that the artist made. In this particular case, the medium, the paint, is tempera paint. Tempera paint is, okay, when we talk about paint, right, there is the material and the binding agent. So if you were an artist in the 13th century, right, 1200s to the 13th century, 1300s on the we're in the 21st century, right? If you were an artist, then you would go into the art studio, you have your nice book, and you have a pile of stuff, right? And then you have another plate with some wet material, and you mix them together and you grind them up, right? And that would give you your paint. These days, like tubes, right? So back then, you go to chemist and you buy some ground up buds, rocks, plants, whatever, right? And you mix it into a binding agent, okay? And the binding agent for tempera is, does anybody know that? What the binding agent for tempera is? Learn this somewhere else? No? Eggs. Thank you. Right? Not just a whole egg, but egg. Have you ever had a nice, like, runny scramble or runny fried egg in the morning for breakfast, run out of the house and come home and that's stuck to the plate, right? It's really a great binding agent. It does, right? So you take the egg yolk, you mix the stuff into it. Maybe a little bit of oil, but it's mostly egg yolk. You get this incredible paint that dries kind of like wash, which is to say opaque, right, rather than transparent. And so you can begin to see, if you look closely, we'll see it better in the picture later, but you can see that it's very, very opaque. Okay, so that's part of the medium, tempera, right? Oil paint wasn't invented yet, where this binding agent is transparent linseed oil. Like I said, they never had tubes, right? You didn't hold a studio. They had systems. That's why they had students, right? Grinding the paint, all this paint. And this is why Impressionists were the first really major group to go outside and paint in the great outdoors, because they had tubes of paint for the first time, right? Okay, so that's egg tempera. They're taking the dry matter, bought from a chemist, I kid you not, like a doctor does it, right? Mixed into this. A binding agent. In addition to this, as we talk about the medium, we can also talk about other elements in the medium. What's coming up next here? Let's see what my next slide is. Gold leaf. The background is actual gold, hammered, thinner than paper thin. Right? Gold has this ability to be able to be hammered as thin as almost any metal. And once it gets to that thinness where it's like tracing paper thin, even thinner than that, we don't really have stuff that's that thin. Right? It's thin enough that if you hold it up and go, it would blow a hole in it. Right? It's that thin. But what you can do is you treat the panel with a little bit of clay, thinned out clay. And then you let it dry, and then you rub it, and the static electricity holds the gold leaf down. So this is real gold. And what they've done is they've done what we call tooling, right? They've tooled the clay to get these patterns that you're seeing, right? So you've got that clay on the surface, you can then start to play with it with, say, like a leather worker's tool, you can start putting holes in it, right, or a knife. And then the gold leaf is so thin that if these are the lines I carve on my, think at the top of my fingers, right, it would literally just fit perfectly that undulation, right? And you buy slip sheeted like thin sliced salami or something from the deli, right? You pull it up, pull it down, and you can rub it, and it's so thin that you don't even see where they overlap, right? Yeah. Can I what? I'll try to slow down a bit, but let's play it back. Remember, it's recorded as well, so yeah. If I get excited, then I forget that I'm talking to, right? Yeah. And again, the nice thing about the recordings is if I do go too fast, you can always take your notes and go back and go, oh, yeah, here we are. And yeah, I understand. Okay, so I'll slow down a little bit. So gold leaf was on the background, right? And it's been tooled so that we get these patterns that you see for her halo against the background. You'll also notice that there's some applied over the top of the temper as well to give you those wrinkles in the fabric, right? Finally, the last part of the medium that we would talk about is the support. That's what this is all on. And we're very used to paintings being on canvas, right? But at this point in history, and really up till around 1500, most paintings were on wooden panels. In particular, oak, right? So this is on wood, right, rather than canvas. And most of the paintings we look at in the first couple of weeks will be painted on wooden panels, okay? Sometimes we even see paintings on copper as well from the Renaissance and Baroque periods. Right? And it's only around 1510 or so in Venice to begin with, and then elsewhere after that we start to see a lot of paintings on canvas. And the reason for the change is economic mostly. Right? But there are some effects you get with canvas that you don't get with wood. Like the way a brush will drag across a rough surface rather than a smooth surface. With either of them, whether it's canvas or panel, you would put a coating on it first to keep whatever you're putting on there from interacting with the wood directly or interacting with the canvas directly. Okay, so this is medium, it's part of style. Right, and so as you're looking around, you'll see things mentioned as being oil on canvas, temper on wood, oil on wood, right? These are the mediums that we're talking about, is the material and the thing that holds it, yeah. Well, this is, at this point, that's a very good question. Okay, there's two things that come up. So the question was, is it only economic, or is there an aesthetic side to this? Is it for beauty? And that's, yeah. At this point, one of the things one of your online texts talks about is the fact that we start to see wood panel paintings not much earlier than this, right? There weren't a lot of paintings independent from being based on a piece of architecture, like a wall, mural, fresco, right? We don't get freestanding paintings until 1200-ish, or so, 1230 even. So this is really quite early in the whole game. And particular, there were changes to the way that church services were being conducted that needed a decoration behind the altar. So the priest is here, right? Forming the Mass, and behind me is the picture. So this was the ritual. So it was an altar piece. Okay? And it's decorated in this altar and meant to be seen in conjunction with the Mass. The thing is that that sort of decoration simply wasn't called for prior to around 1230 or so. And that the decorations, as I said, were stained glass and wall murals, right, sculptures as well. So why did they turn to wood in particular? I think it was just plentiful and easy. Also permanent, right? Wood is just seen as much more permanent, too. And the effect you get from it, one of the things that, even though it's kind of unrealistic looking, right? One of the effects you get from a wood panel painting is the sense of sort of almost an enamel-like finish. Right? So if you look at her face, right, there's something just sort of soft and smooth and beautiful about the way that they've handled the subtle changes from light to dark. And they're not that strong, right? Or even if you look at the artificial way the folds are handled on her drapery, you get these beautiful shots of lines of gold everywhere, right? And there's this sort of sumptuousness to the finish of it that would have been very, very desirable for the people at the time. Right? So it's a very good question, and I don't know if that's a satisfactory answer to this, but nonetheless, it is both economic and aesthetic. Yeah, it's very, very beautiful. Here's a close-up of Jesus as well. Although his other eye is, once you get up close, is not so hot, right? And you can also see that there's a part missing there, and as you look more closely, you can see other things that are missing. It's a conservative still. You can tell. Okay? Just see that really clearly right there. That's what's been filled in. Right? Because you can see that the crack pattern is in the top. And that's there's a job for you if you ever do an art history degree, right? Conservatory. Take your science degree, take your history degree, you go out and do this. Right? They're still doing that with their cakes in the National Gallery to do insects. I get the feeling that this might be. And sometimes somebody's damaged it, sometimes this thing's chunk out of there, you know. Okay. So just because I've got the nice details, there's Christ as well, right? And with this one, you can see even more clearly the tooling I was talking about, right? That there are these floral patterns within his halo and in the Virgin Mary's halo as well that give you part of that style that's particular to this period, right? Now, what do I have here? If you want to know more about technique, the Smart History website has a 10.5-minute thing on how you do this. So if you go back to the PowerPoint that's on Canvas, you can click on that and it's a link. Okay? And wherever there's something like that, I'll try and pull these in. Okay? So there's a nice little link on how to make gold ground. I think you have to play it, right? So if I did it right now, it would open it. But I'm not going to, I don't know how to stop it. Right? So I'm not going to do that. Okay? So, we're talking about now style and iconography, style and subject matter, right? As two of the things that we focus on, okay? I love this picture. It's a little stiff still. Giotto is very similar in a lot of ways. Giotto, Italian pronunciations, an I after a consonant makes it soft, right? I'm trying to think of a good word that you would know. Think of how spaghetti is spelled. There's an H in there, right? Because if there were an H in there, it would be spaghetti, right? So Giotto, if there was not an I, it would be Gatto, right? But Giotto, right? Giotto is the artist here. And he's a fairly well-documented artist. And he's working, you can see, only about 25, 35 years later. And people credit Giotto with being the most important, maybe the strongest force to break with a traditional style of painting and move somewhere else. Now, there's some things similar with Giotto's style, some things that are very much the subject matter is the same, with some details that are different. It still uses a gold background with tooling in the halos that you can see. well. Mary holds Christ with the same hand. He reaches toward her slightly, but you'll see he's reaching toward that flower instead. Similar in a lot of different ways. The big difference is that it's in half length rather than in full length, right? That's a huge difference. But even if we compare them side to side at the same size, right, you can see that there are other things that Giotto does differently. First, he's gotten rid of the setting. Right? There's no chair. There's a throne. Right? But there's other things as well. Right? I would argue, and most people do, that Giotto's more realistic looking. Even if Giotto's body type tends to be sort of a unibrow, kind of Frankenstein head sort of thing, you know, like one heavy, strong shadow over the eyes, right? But there's things about Giotto that make him seem more realistic. And one of the things I'd like to point to is how he shades the drapery. Look at that in particular, right? To go back to the example on the right, the highlights of the drapery are gold. The shadows are all the same color of blue. There is no modulation between them. It doesn't fade from highlight to shadow. It's one or the other. And while you can tell where her knees are, let's go back, right? You can tell where her knees are. The anatomy's not kind of wonky, isn't it? Look how short her shins are, right, from the knees, right? Because, right, this is her knee right here. Yeah? And it's just, once you start to isolate the different parts of the body, it just gets kind of weird, you know? In addition to that, while you can see that the knee is meant to be protruding, there's no sense of sort of modeling it in 3 dimensions. It's all on the surface, right? Blue highlighted with these yellows, these golds on the surface. Now, if you look at Giotto, right, you can see that all of the folds are the result of having observed drapery. It's gradated from light to dark, everywhere we look. And that's true for the bodies as well. More so. Now, that was getting there, right? The one on the right has some modeling, but Giotto's is much more subtle, right? There's a more range. If you think about a range of light to dark as being 100 to 5 or something like that, down to 1, the one on the right has 100 and 60 and 40 and 20. And Giotto's got the range. Every element, you say, oh, that's 87% dark. That's, 22% light. Right? It's a whole range of tones that he uses. Right? And that's one of the ways in which this becomes much more realistic. Right? And Giotto is credited with bringing that to Italian pictures right around the year 1300. A new realism into this traditional style. So as we talk about style, right, this is the kind of thing for us to talk about what are these differences, and then try to account for them. So, again, the $10 term that we use in this, and a term that you hear often in our history for modeling in light and shadow, chiaroscuro, right? Which simply means, and by the way, the H is there to harden it, right? In other words, it would be chiaroscuro. It works the opposite as it does in English, right? Chiaroscuro simply means light dark. Chiaro e scuro, right? Chiaro is light, scuro is dark. Obscured, right? Darkened. Okay. And that's the term that they use and we still use for describing what Giotto is doing better here. He's using chiaroscuro. But there's other elements that make it seem more realistic. It doesn't seem as artificially posed. Giotto focuses in all of his works on the humanity of the religious figure. His Mary and Jesus behave like mothers and children behave. He's not posing and blessing us like a priest at the altar. Okay, granted, he still looks like a little man. He even looks like a hair plugs, doesn't he? Right? I'm noticing that. Like, really, really bad input there. But look at this. It's so cute, right? She's holding him up, right? And he's going to balance him out. He's got her finger in his hand, right? He's grabbing onto her finger. It's just a charming little detail that Giotto's watched babies. He's watched how children behave, and he's getting that, and he's making it human. And, and the eye on the far side of the nose no longer sort of sits out like a puffer fish, or something like that, right? He's got that part as well. He looks like a little man because there's a good chance that Giotto didn't have babies modeling for him, right? But over and above that, there's a theological reason, symbolism there. Jesus is fully mature even in infancy, right? Okay. Not only is he looking toward her, and his mouth is open, he's breathing, these little touches that you might not be aware of at the beginning are what makes Giotto's picture alive. And even contemporary critics said that the one thing that separated Giotto from living things was that they didn't talk. Right? It's as alive as anything. And it might seem stilted to us today, 700 years later, right? But that's the appreciation of Giotto at the time, right? So Christ is reaching over. He's got that cute little thing about grabbing her finger as he's studying himself, which is, I think, there to give us this sense of that. And this is nice close-up, really close-up, where you can see, I'm talking about painting, you can see the way that Giotto paints it. It's paint, right? So you can start to see all the lines that build up the tone. It's actually cross-section of the paint, right? So it starts to this way, this way, see that here. How he built up the light over the dark shadow, right? Really nice that way. That's the sort of thing you'll be tested. I'm hoping it makes sense. But there it is, grabbing long hair, right? I also like the fact that this is a joke they make often. Of course, her fingernails are perfect, right? No ratty fingernails for the Virgin Mary by any means, right? And then we look closely at her face, right? And we can see more of that happening. Again, little things. Let's look at the red on the edge of her eye, in the socket, right? On the eyeball, right in here, right? Just a little touch of red in there that makes it the thing that you might not notice from a distance, yeah? Her mouth is open, you can see her teeth, see her front teeth, right? Through her open mouth, she's breathing there. She's trying to talk. So when people say they don't talk, well, they're admitting that maybe they look like they ought to be, right? Or look like they're trying to be. Right? So Giotto has significant stylistic differences from what happened half a generation before him, right? Literally 25, 35 years before him. Something's changed with Giotto's work. Is it all chalked up to one brilliant guy? Not entirely. Right? There's more to explain it than simply that. Right? And so this brings us to the third thing we talked about. So two things need to be discussed, right? Subject matter, aka iconography. Style, which includes also artistic medium. The third thing we do in an art history class is we try to explain those choices. Right? Why did all these artists choose the subject they chose? Why did they choose to do it the way they chose to do it? We try to explain that. And we do this through investigating the historical context. This is the difference between an art history class and an art appreciation class. As fun as it would be just to look at these things closely and go, oh, look at that paint. We're going to try to explain why Giotto chose to do the sorts of things that he chose to do. Okay? So if we think about the historical context for these things, they both came from Italy. Okay? Giotto is working in the city of Florence, which we'll talk more about. We're not quite sure with the one on the right where it was done, but they're both probably working in Italy. There's some fairly recent question as to whether or not the one on the right came from Constantinople, but for now, we'll go with the traditional, right? Italy. Both of them were made to adorn an altar. We talked about this, right? They sat behind the priest in a church as he performed the Mass. Now, the one on the right that we've been looking at quite a bit is about 4.5 feet tall, so it's fairly visible. Giotto's is about like this. And there were panels that went on either side of it that made it bigger, with saints on either side. And in the 19th century or sometime before then, they were cut up and distributed in different museums. So one of them is in Boston, another one's in Florence still, all over the world, right? We've got the center part, which is the virginal child. Okay? But both of them were what we call an altarpiece. That's a term you should get yourself familiar with. We're going to hear it a lot. A lot of the works from the first 3 weeks, 4 weeks of class are altarpieces. Because the church was the major patron for the arts. And even if the church didn't pay for it themselves, people paid for them to put them in churches. This accounts for the subject matter. I said, why did Giotto choose the subject? He didn't choose the subject. Somebody told him to do it. It's just a job. It's a commission. Right? It's like hiring a landscaper, and then you tell him, like, I want some cypress trees, and I want some roses. You don't even really know whatever you want to do, right? Or a house painter. You say, I want this to be an eggplant. I don't want sage green. Probably want sage green instead of eggplant. Still, that's the idea, right? Giotto and our artist on the right, whose name we don't know, are being told what to do. And they are making the work only after someone comes to them and says, I want it. Okay? This is huge. We think of artists sitting in the studio making stuff and hoping they can find a gallery to represent them so they can sell it and foist their ideas on an unwilling public. Sometimes unwilling, right? But that idea of making art on spec, right? You're not doing it, you're doing it with the hopes that somebody wants it. And you might starve if they don't. That didn't exist in the world of art at any great level until at least the 17th century. And even then kind of spotty. Right? Artists are craftsmen. They are being paid to make works of art where a patron, a donor, a wealthy person will come to them and say, I want this, and I want it like that. And it's the artist's job to make it so. Right? So they will have a theological advisor to make sure that they're not painting heresy. And the work has already a place it is destined for. Okay? So Giotto's subject, we're talking about subject matter, historical context, right? Why did they have the subject they did? Because they were told to. Because this is what they wanted for the churches. And most churches at that point, this is before Protestantism, where the focus on the Virgin Mary was very strong as a much more compassionate intercessor for our problems, right? It's focused on her, right? So that's one of the things that we can talk about, okay? Now, we're out of time, so I can't get into the historical context of that. We'll pick that up on the Thursday, right? Let's see, I will have this recording up later this evening, I hope, or at least the first thing in the morning, and then we will continue with our discussion of why did Giotto's style change from the tradition on Thursday, okay?